We'll start here. Let's begin with prayer. Father, thank you for the afternoon and the Word of God. Help it to direct our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, so Mrs. Grummer, tell me something about the book we're studying today. One thing about the book of Exodus.
One thing about the book?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's one big thing about the book. I'm glad we're not having to do all these things again for salvation.
That's right. That is a big thing. How about you, Jacob? One thing for you.
I love these two chapters. I love the Passover, but I love 14 and 15 so much.
That's nice.
Very, very nice passages, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
And how about you, Elaine?
I always wasn't impressed with the Red Sea, how we divided it.
Yeah, the Red Sea crossing, that was something, isn't it? And Paul, how about you?
Well, it says again that in the book of Exodus that God is in control, and what he does. I mean, he does what he wants because he's sovereign and he's in control. He's omniscient and omnipresent, and to me it just gives it gives an understanding. It gives a good understanding, and it's in details. It gives a good detailed understanding.
That's right. And Mom, something you guys remember from Exodus, this whole book of Exodus. Something we've read or something we haven't read, yes.
Well, the whole book of Exodus.
Well, look, if it's going to confuse you to say the whole book, just say Exodus.
Well, I suppose what the most important thing is the Passover. The Passover, when the lamb's blood was shed and put on the lentils, top and the bottom, that's a picture of Jesus Christ who died.
Yes, it is.
God that taketh away the sin of the world, and that's how he was known as the Lamb, Jesus, from then on, I guess.
That's correct.
I never thought about that.
Tammy, how about you?
I like your questions very much.
Good.
They open up each verse very well.
Good. I'm glad you like them. How about you, Tammy? Pardon me? The study guide, yes.
I didn't know it was a study guide. But
I need to make that more clear.
So your question is about what?
Book of Exodus. Something about the book of Exodus that you like, you appreciate,
Well, of course I like the Passover and the deliverance that God gave to his people, the children of Israel, how they were in bondage, and God delivered them, and the picture that he gave through the sacrifice of the lamb, and then the blood that was applied to the doorpost and lintel, like the cross. So still picturing
that's good.
The work of Calvary.
Yes. That's good. Very good. Thank you. Let's look at Exodus chapter 14 today. And Mrs. Grummer, you start with verse 1 there, please. Verse 1, Exodus 14, verse 1, and we'll read 7 verses.
Oh, read the verse. I'm sorry. Yep. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying,
Jacob.
Do you speak unto the children of Israel that they turn and encamp before Pihahiroth between Migdol and the sea, over against Baalzephon? Before it shall ye encamp by the sea.
Elaine.
For Pharaoh will say to the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land. The wilderness hath shut them in.
Verse 4.
And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them, and I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, and the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord, and they did so.
Tammy, verse 5.
And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people, and they said, why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us?
Mrs. Grummer, go ahead and read verse 6, please, and Jacob, you read verse 7.
And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him.
And he took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt and captains over every one of them.
All right, thanks, Jacob. Elaine, from verse 1, I got a question for you. Who spake unto Moses? Now, first of all, tell me who Moses is. And then tell me, or Paul, you tell me who Moses is.
Moses was servant who had a brother named Aaron, who was a servant.
That's right.
And the Lord spake unto Moses. He did speak unto Moses. The Lord spake unto Moses.
That's right. That's who spoke. That's who spoke unto Moses. And Elaine, what did the Lord tell Moses to encamp?
Well, I have time with that. Let me see. Before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea near Baalzephon.
That's good. That's right. Now, Mom, what does the word encamp mean?
It means camp, pitch your tent.
Okay.
I think.
Good. That's encompassed in that principle, encamping, setting up camp. Tammy, a question from verse 3. What was Pharaoh going to believe had shut the children of Israel in?
The wilderness.
The wilderness. Now, what's a characteristic of the wilderness, Mrs. Grummer? Oh, she's on mute right now. Paul, Paul's off mute. So what's your thought? Just a second, Mrs. Grummer. Just a second. Go ahead, Paul.
The wilderness is like a barren piece of land. It's barren and desolate.
That's right. What can you add to that, Mrs. Grummer?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What can you add to that?
I didn't hear what he said.
Oh, can you say that again, Paul?
It's a land. Wilderness is a piece of land which is barren and quite desolate and remote.
A remote, desolate land, and so I have to get that device hooked up for you, Mrs. Grummer, so you can hear us better. At least hear everyone better, not just people that are close to the phone. So what were you going to say in addition to that, Mrs. Grummer?
There was a lot of trees. Was a wilderness? Is that what the question was?
Yeah, in the wilderness, in the sense of the context of the wilderness that the children of Israel were going to be encamping in. That wilderness, not the wilderness that we would perhaps be familiar with here in the United States.
I'm not sure.
How about you, Jacob? Any guesses?
Desert land.
Like desert land, like to add to what Paul was saying. Go ahead. What's your thought?
Well, when we was in the Holy Land,
Mm-hmm.
we took a bus from I forget. We took a bus from this one area that our plane landed in, and we drove in the bus. We drove and drove and drove and drove and drove,
Okay.
for a long time, and it was just barren land.
Okay.
Not a lot, not trees and not.
Have you seen anything like it in the United States?
Probably, I just can't remember right now.
Okay.
Probably not as.
Perhaps like
I
from
don't really
Nebraska,
know.
perhaps?
I haven't been to Nebraska. There's places I haven't been, so I don't. Wilderness.
Like Texas, different parts of Texas, perhaps?
Right, I guess so. I never called it a wilderness, any of that.
Well, I'm not asking you to call it a wilderness, but you're describing something. You're trying to describe something there's not very much activity going on there.
Right. And not houses and not gardens or not fields of corn.
Mm-hmm.
Big fields I've seen out in the West, they usually have wheat on it or corn that's usually productive. I haven't been out. I've been to Arizona, but I don't think we went. Never mind.
But nonetheless, you remember taking from the transportation center there in someplace in Israel, going to a different location.
From Jordan. That's where
from
it was.
Jordan.
From Jordan. We went over that bridge with the soldiers, the Alami Bridge or some bridge. Elmo or else, I don't know what's called.
Okay. All right. Sorry, you don't have to know.
Okay.
We know what you're talking about. Tammy, for a question from verse 4, whose heart did the Lord harden?
He hardened Pharaoh's heart.
He hardened Pharaoh's heart. The purpose of hardening Pharaoh's heart, Mrs. Grummer, why did the Lord harden Pharaoh's heart? What was part of the reasoning the Lord had behind that?
Well, he hardened this. His heart was already hardened, and the Lord continued to harden his heart to show the people that he was our Lord.
Right, then,
Why let Israel go?
furthermore, if you look at the verse, what you said was right, but the idea, Jacob, can you add to that a little bit? Add to that.
honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, and that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord.
See, he was entangled, they were entangled in the wilderness, or so they thought. And so the heart of Pharaoh was hardened to the extent that he desired to follow after them.
Right.
See, follow after them. So therefore, that all these things that take place, that were going to take place, that we just mentioned. Elaine, from verse 5, what question did Pharaoh and his servants ask?
Why have we done this that we have let Israel go from serving us?
All right, and so we see initially the heart of Pharaoh was convinced that to let them go. And now they're second guessing this because this is the hand of God in them. So the guy could even be glorified to a greater extent because they thought they were entangled in the wilderness, but they had more to see. They had more to see. In verse 7, Paul, you may know the answer to this question. I'm not sure or not. You do or not. But how many chariots did Pharaoh take to pursue after the children of Israel? How many chariots?
600.
600, that's right. He took
Excellent.
600 chariots.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do we know about a chariot, Mom? What's so special about a chariot? What do we know?
Well, what I thought was interesting, that's all the chariots that Egypt had, the way I read it. But I read it. Well, a chariot is a horse pulls it.
Okay.
Usually, I suppose. And I saw some chariots when we were there in Egypt, and it's usually enough people for like one person that drives it, and then you could have a passenger next to you. I don't think it's behind you, I think it's next to you. And they go real fast, or they go slow, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In war, they probably go real fast, and all together like a unit, and it must be very frightening.
Oh, it would be. It would be. I mean, if you're
To see it, if they're coming after you.
so, Tammy, what's a modern day comparison to a chariot? Would you say? Is there any comparison you think, or?
Well, I don't think a car is a fair comparison because I would think that a car would go much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
50, 60 miles an hour is not what a chariot could move.
Right.
It would be pulled by horses, so as fast as they could run, maybe 25 miles an hour at the most,
Right.
I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not even that.
Right.
So maybe a moped, I don't know.
Right. That's
You
good.
really don't know much about chariots.
No, but they go as fast as the horse can go. Mrs. Grummer, have you ever been on a horse-drawn carriage before?
Oh, yes.
What can you tell me about a horse-drawn carriage? What's something interesting about that?
Well, I don't know if I could call it a carriage, but we had a wagon
Okay.
that we had to use when we lived out in the country because you couldn't use the car. It was all muddy.
Mm-hmm.
And the horses pulled back, and that's about it.
Okay, so horse-drawn wagon. Okay, so
Yes.
a horse would pull a wagon, and so these chariots. This was part of the army. This is part of the army of Egypt. These chariots, and the people who were riding them were soldiers, were men in the army. Yes.
I can't remember if this happened to me, but like if you're out there with a tractor, I had a friend who lived on a farm. Her father was a farmer, so she was a farmer. And you get like in the snow or in the mud or something, and your tractor would get stuck. They'd go get the horses, and the horses would pull the tractor out.
Okay.
Which was sort of interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to have the horses pull the tractors out.
If the tractor wouldn't pull you home.
Mm-hmm.
I was snowed in one time, and then I'd been there a long time, and so I guess they wanted me to get home. So the father, I think he used the tractor. Somehow I have a horse in mind, but anyhow, the tractor would get stuck.
And so when you're on your feet, if you're just walking and you have if you have one chariot coming or several chariots coming, or even if it's something that's mobile that's moving 25 miles an hour. In this case, it was a horse-drawn chariot with a bunch of determined drivers and riders in this chariot, and they're going to come after you or run over you or try and do you harm. That would be a frightening thing to see. Elaine, go ahead and read verse 8, please.
With what kind of hand did the children of Israel depart from the land of Egypt?
Read the verse, I'm sorry. Read the verse.
Oh, okay.
We're going to read verses 8 through 14. I'm sorry, I should have made that clear.
And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel, and the children of Israel went out with a high hand.
And verse 9, Mom, go ahead.
But the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, besides by someplace before another place.
All right. Number 10, Tammy.
And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid, and the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord.
All right, Mrs. Grammer, verse 11, please.
And they said unto Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt?
And Jacob, verse 12, please.
Is this not the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness.
Elaine, verse 13, please.
And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever.
Mom.
The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace.
And Tammy, verse 15.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou to me? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward.
All right, thank you. With Mrs. Grammer, with what kind of hand did the Lord lead the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt? With what kind of hand? I missed what you said, Mrs. Grammer. With what kind of hand did the children of Israel lead? Pardon me, with what hand did the Lord lead the children of Israel out of Egypt?
8.
From verse 8.
Is she on mute?
Yes, everyone's on mute right now. I know Jacob can hear you, but there was a plane that flew overhead, so I'm having a hard time hearing you right now.
At their place or our place?
Oh, sorry about
At
that.
our place, yes.
On
I
mute.
don't know.
My
He's
Okay.
got it. She's got
Yes, with a high hand. That's right. With a high
What does
hand.
that mean exactly, you think?
Very, very strong high hand. You know, it's with a high hand. In other words, it's like more like a victorious. You've heard the term upper hand, have you not? You've heard the term upper hand before?
Oh yeah, in a deal or something.
Well, yeah. It was they had the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
The children of Israel had the advantage with a high hand.
Mm-hmm.
No, they were.
High hand.
I mean, they were. Number one, God was behind them. Number two, God allowed them to spoil the Egyptians. You know, and those are the primary reasons that God brought them out the high hand. You following?
Mm-hmm. It's all right.
Jacob, a question from verse 9. Who overtook the children of Israel as they encamped beside Pihahiroth?
The Egyptians pursued after them and all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, encamping by the sea between beside Pihahiroth, before Baalzephon.
Okay, so the armies of Egypt with how many chariots there, Paul?
600.
The armies of Egypt with 600 chariots, they overtook the children of Israel. And Elaine, a question from verse 10. Who marched after the children of Israel?
The Egyptians.
And Paul, what did the children of Israel do when they discovered that the Egyptians were marching after them?
I don't remember. I'll be honest, I don't remember.
So what's the natural thing for us to do? Well, what should we do? If we were the ones that found ourselves being pursued,
Right, they left. I guess they left. So I think of.
they left Egypt with a high hand, and then the Egyptians pursued after them. Tammy.
Well, they couldn't leave because they were trapped.
Yes, they couldn't leave. They were trapped. They were trapped. They were trapped in, so they couldn't go any further.
Because the Red Sea was there.
They were trapped. But what they did, they cried unto the Lord. They cried unto the Lord for assistance. And when we run into trouble, whether it's big trouble, small trouble, this is what we have to do. We have to cry unto the Lord to assist us, to get us out of whatever trouble we find ourselves in, trouble we get ourselves in, or trouble that is pursuing after us. So, for question verse 11, Mama, where did the children of Israel say they were going to die?
They said they would die in the wilderness. And I thought it was very interesting. I don't know if that's the verse, but there are no graves there. Because there are no graves in Egypt, God has taken us away. So I wonder if there was a shortage for graves. I wonder if I just wondered about that when it said that. But it had nothing to do with their leaving.
Right.
I just wondered about that because I wonder when there'll be more people buried than there will be people, there'll be land. I wonder if that.
I'm not sure if that's going to be the case here with what this is.
No, I'm just thinking about our country.
Yeah.
Countries. That's why they cremate and stuff because they don't have enough room to bury.
Right.
The sea comes in.
That's right. That's correct. Good thinking there. I'm not sure what the answer to that question is. I think 2,000 people can be buried in an acre of land.
Really?
I believe so. I mean that's single depth graves.
Okay.
I believe that's correct. I was talking to Pastor Hayes not too long ago. I think his name is. And that's what I think he indicated to me.
Who's Pastor Hayes?
He's from he's pastors church either in Maryland or Delaware.
Oh, okay.
That's maybe about an hour from here, a little over an hour from here.
Okay.
But some cemeteries you could be buried too deep. In the United States, sir, too deep.
Excuse me, Dan.
Paul.
I thought the actual when they bury you, I thought they only go like 6 feet down. I heard.
It's the bottom of the vault is 6 feet, and so if it's single depth, the bottom of the vault would be 6 feet down, the top of the vault would be 4 feet down. But if you were doing double, you would have to put the bottom of the vault 8 feet down, and the top of the vault would be 6 feet down. That would be the next vault on the top of it would still be the top of it would be 4 feet down. Understand?
Yes. Another question. When they bury, I don't know whether this is true or not, but I heard that when they bury, do they have you facing like in the eastward direction, like the body, the body?
It depends on the layout of the cemetery, Paul. It depends on the layout of the cemetery. Each cemetery is laid out differently, and it depends on each section of the cemetery has a different configuration to it. So but there's uniformity throughout that section. All the feet point one direction, all the heads point the other direction. At least they're supposed to. There's uniformity through that section of the cemetery. Understand?
Yes.
Thank
you.
Sure.
There was a question over here.
I had a question, but I lost it, and I really wanted to ask it.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to answer it.
I don't know it now.
And Jacob, he can put his phone on mute, and he can answer it. He can take it off mute, he can answer it.
I don't remember what it was, so
I'm off mute.
Okay.
I can't seem to hold questions like I used to.
Well, maybe Jacob could tell you what your question was.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So, I think her question was, Jacob, is do you have white socks on or red socks on?
What?
In that 72-degree weather there in Texas.
No socks.
It's white socks, but the socks are not necessary today because there's no polar breeze.
Okay. So there, he answered your question.
That's not my
Very
question.
nice.
Okay.
I wish I knew what it was.
So let me ask Tammy this question, and we'll get back to your question. Verse 12, Tammy. Who did the children of Israel think they should be serve.
Oh, I already know my question. Can I please ask it now?
Go ahead.
When they bury double, like that one on top of the other, do you have to know that you're going to be buried double before the first person is put in?
Yes.
So I think that was Richard wants to do. I hope that, I didn't know that you had to know.
Well, I think
I mean, this is,
it makes it a lot simpler.
yeah, you would have to take all that out and put
it
it
makes it a lot simpler when you make that plan in advance.
Yeah.
You have, because you have to, the first person that dies, they have to make sure that they go deep. You have to go an extra 2 feet, the depth of the vault.
Right.
And so because the top of the vault has to be 4 feet below the grade.
And this is off the subject again, but I remember when the first winter that David was in the ground.
Yes.
I know that he's with the Lord, but his body's in
Right.
the ground. And it was hard for me, even though I knew he wasn't there. But when it was cold here,
Yes.
it was cold. And I told you, I said, I feel bad. It's so cold. And you told me, you comforted me. You told me that 6 feet down or something, it wasn't cold. Like, it was not real hot or anything. But
Right.
you told me something. Tell me what you told me.
Yeah, but it's below the frost line.
Uh-huh.
And so I think it's in the 50s or 50 degrees plus or minus, something around that area.
And even though I knew he was dead and everything, that was a comfort, because all I could think of was, oh, he's so cold there. Even though I knew he wasn't there, but that was a real comfort to me. And I shared that with some other mother and she told me she had the same feelings. You know, about, as a mother, we think about our children in a different way.
Right.
So that was, you wouldn't realize that would be comforting, but it is comforting.
Well, I'm glad it was.
Yeah.
Tammy, getting back to the question from verse 12, who do they say they wanted to serve or should have served? The children of Israel.
Well, they said that it would have been better for them if they had stayed and served the Egyptians. Yeah,
which when they found themselves in this particular predicament, they were looking back and they were second guessing and said, well, we should have stayed where we were, even though they could have acknowledged that they were worse off. We should never be content with where we are, where we were. We should be continually going forward, not going backward or staying the same. Yes, go ahead.
I seem to be full of things that I shouldn't be, but one lady that we know real well, she always wondered if she followed the Lord's will. She's old. She's like 90 now. And this would be maybe 10 years ago or 5 years. And she said she wanted to do the Lord's will, and her life turned out so wrong and everything. And had she done the Lord's will, and I told her that if she prayed about the matter and she felt that that's what the Lord wanted her to do, then you have to accept that was God's will for you. I don't know if that was good advice, but otherwise we'd be going regretting all the time. We would have no joy whatsoever.
Right. That's right.
Do you think that was good advice, or?
I think so. Yeah. She prayed about it, and she felt that God wanted her in that particular situation, or not in that situation.
Then when she looked back, she'd say, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this." That's her whole life was, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this." I said, "The Lord put you there and do that. You have to accept God's will for you."
So, Mrs. Grummer, for a question from verse 13, who weren't the children of Israel going to see anymore?
Who were they going to see no?
Who weren't?
The Egyptians.
The Egyptians. Now, Jacob, remind me real quick, who are these Egyptians? Paul, why don't you remind me, who were the Egyptians?
The people that the children of Israel were fighting against.
That's right. And Jacob, question from verse 14, who is going to fight for Israel?
The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace.
Okay. And the Lord was going to fight for them, and they were supposed to hold their peace, which sometimes it's hard to hold the peace. But that's what God told them to do. So Elaine, from verse 15, who did the Lord want to go forward?
The children of Israel.
Yes, that they go forward. Now remember, they had some They were kind of entrapped there for a moment, and God told them to go forward. Mrs. Grumber, go ahead and let's read some more verses. Read verse 16 and Jacob 17 and so forth. Go ahead.
But lift thou up thy rod and stretch out thy hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea.
And I, behold, I will harden the heart of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon all his host, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen.
Elaine, verse 18, please.
And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I have got me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen.
Verse 19.
And the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them.
And Tammy, verse 20.
And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them. But it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all night.
All right, Mrs. Grummer, 21, please.
And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided.
And
The children of Israel went into the midst of the sea, and upon the dry ground the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left.
Elaine, verse 23.
And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen.
All right, Mom, question, verse 16. How were the children of Israel going to cross the Red Sea?
16.
Yeah, from verse 16, yes. Mm-hmm. How were they going to do it?
Moses would stretch out his rod over the Red Sea, and they would walk out on dry land.
Paul, what kind of land was that, Paul?
Dry land.
Dry land, as opposed to wet land, on dry land.
And the sea divided before the eyes.
And so Tammy, from verse 17, question for you. Whose heart was the Lord going to harden?
Which verse?
Verse 17.
I say Pharaoh's, and the hearts of the Egyptians.
The hearts of the Egyptians. So,
Following Pharaoh's lead.
following Pharaoh's lead. It's very important that they had bad leadership, and so the people are following his lead, and all their hearts were hardened. The first was just Pharaoh's heart. Now it's all the Egyptians' hearts are becoming hardened. And Mrs. Grummer, from verse 18, a question for you, a two-part question. You can answer the first part. What were the Egyptians going to know?
Shall know that I am the Lord.
And Jacob, why were they going to know that? Or how were they going to know that?
When it says, when I have gotten the honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen.
All right. And so, perhaps the children of Israel aren't understanding exactly what's happening, but they've been told they're not going to see the Egyptians anymore, and they're told that the Egyptians would know that the Lord is the Lord, and God is going to get himself honor. And so Elaine, from verse 19, from where did the angel of God go?
Went before the camp of Israel.
And then Paul, he went from before the camp, and then to where did he go?
Egypt.
He stood behind them. That's right. He stood behind them between Israel and Egypt. So he was in the front, leading, and then he went behind the children of Israel and put himself behind them, essentially between Israel and Egypt. Israel and Egypt. And so, in verse 20, Mom, what did the pillar of cloud give to the Egyptians?
Darkness, the cloud of darkness.
Darkness. And Paul, what did it give to the children of Israel? The pillar of cloud gave darkness to the Egyptians. What did it give to Israel?
light.
Light, he gave them light, that's correct. And Tammy, from verse 21, question for you here. What did the Lord divide?
The waters.
The waters. He was told to stretch Moses, God told Moses to stretch out his hands over the sea. And God caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind. God's the cause of this wind. In the Song of Moses, in the next chapter, we see this through his nostrils. He breathed through his nostrils, essentially. When we breathe, if we notice, sometimes we can feel the air coming in and out as we breathe, depending if we breathe through our nose or through our mouth. But still, God caused this east wind to come, and he divided the waters. Now, what does it mean to divide something, Mrs. Grummer?
Divided in certain parts.
Okay. And Jacob, what were the waters of the Red Sea like to the children of Israel? In verse 22.
When it's in the midst of the sea upon dry ground, the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on the left, on their left.
A wall. What are some characteristics of a wall, Paul?
Wall solid.
Okay.
Maybe, let's see, solid depending on whether it's concrete or brick, and maybe it could be anywhere from like 10 feet all the way up to maybe 20 or above.
That's correct. Walls could get big. And so, Elaine, with this wall of water, what do you think about that? A wall of water.
It's really something.
You see, it says that on verse 22 it talks about, and the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon dry ground. So that's one thing. The dry ground. Now, who's been to the beach before, the ocean or the Gulf of Mexico before? Have you been there, Paul?
Gulf of Mexico.
Where? No.
Well, I've been to the ocean, yeah.
I've been in the ocean.
Okay, well, I'm trying to take some type of beach area. Now, describe to me, Paul, when you're walking on the beach, how do you know that you're getting closer to the, what are some reasons you know you're getting closer to the water?
Well, one, I hear the waves rushing in.
Okay, number one, you hear it.
And
Okay.
so I feel like the sand under my feet is slopes off.
But how does the sand under your feet change?
When I get, it changes when I get to the edge, the water's edge.
Okay.
It slopes off, the smoothness.
The smoothness. Now, what is that? It went from being kind of a hot sand that's kind of smushy. I'm not sure if you call sand smushy. To more of a wet sand that's
Cool.
a little cooler and solider, but it still gives some. But now notice what the Bible says is they went across on dry land, and the water was to them a wall on the right hand and on the left hand. So we have two things that are happening. They have dry land they're crossing, just like if someone went outside and walked on dry land outside, and then there's a wall of water to the left and to the right. Now Jacob, who pursued after the children of Israel as they crossed the Red Sea?
Egyptians.
The Egyptians. And the Egyptians thought that would be a good thing. Their heart was hardened, and they had revenge in their heart, and they wanted to bring these children of Israel back to Egypt, some of them at least. They probably wanted to kill some of them as well. Now, I'm going to read verse 24. We'll read some more verses there. 24 and the following. Please.
24.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked up unto the host of Egyptians through the pillar of fire. He could see through that.
Mm-hmm. You could.
And of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians.
All right, Tammy, 25, please.
He did something
And
different.
took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians.
Mrs. Grummer, verse 26, please.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch
Elaine, verse 28, please.
And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the hosts of Pharaoh that came into the sea. After them, there remained not so much as one of them.
Mom, 29.
For the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were down to them on their right hand and on their left.
Tammy, verse 30.
Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore.
And Mrs. Grummer, verse 31.
And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses.
All right, thank you. So, Jacob, I got a question for you. Who troubled the host of the Egyptians?
Lord,
Okay, so the Lord troubled them. You look through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and he troubled the Egyptians. And Elaine, who said this? Let us flee from the face of Israel. Who said that?
The Egyptians.
The Egyptians said that. Now, again, Paul, why would you suppose they would say that?
Because they were being persecuted. I think they were being persecuted.
They were being troubled. God was troubling them a whole lot. And that troubling was only the beginning. And so a two-part question, Mom. The first part of it is, what did the Lord instruct Moses to do? In verse 26.
Stretch out thine hand over the sea.
And Tammy, what happened, or Paul? Let's see. What happened when he did that?
He said
When God said, stretch out your hand over the sea, and when Moses did that, what happened to the sea?
That part I don't recall.
Yeah, Tammy, help me out with that, verse 26. What happened when Moses put his hand back over the sea again? From verse 26.
The sea went back to its normal configuration.
Okay.
It fell on them.
It came back, and you had a wall on the left, wall on the right, were dry ground,
It did fall on them.
and you had the Egyptians that were pursuing after them. Their hearts were hardened. The Egyptians, these 600 chariots, and the walls came in. The water came back to how it was supposed to be. Now, what does this mean, Jacob? Mrs. Grummer, what does this mean? That the walls, the water returned to where it used to be. What would that mean?
Well, they were in trouble. The walls came in on them.
That's right. And so, Jacob, what covered the horsemen and the chariots?
water.
Water. How much water?
All of it.
All of it. All the water returned back to the way it was. Elaine, in verse 29, upon what did the children of Israel walk as they crossed the Red Sea?
Dry land.
Okay, they walked upon the dry land. And again, we were reminded the waters for them on the right hand and on the left hand is a wall of water. And now, Paul, this is a question from what we read earlier, but who did the children of Israel see dead upon the shores of the Red Sea?
Who they see dead?
Yeah, upon the shores of the Red Sea, who did they see dead?
Oh, Pharaoh.
That's right, Pharaoh, the Egyptians. They saw the Egyptians, including Pharaoh, dead upon the seashore. But at the end, it says Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore, and it's,
He was one of them.
we believe he's one of the Egyptians. He's one of the Egyptians. Tammy.
I believe that one of the Psalms talks about the Pharaoh being drowned in the sea.
Yeah.
Yes. Even probably the next chapter, the Song of Moses, talks about that
I was looking for it today.
briefly. But even the Psalms, the psalm you're citing goes into it even in greater detail, I believe.
It talks about his chariots, but it doesn't
Yes.
say him.
You're right.
Per se.
You're right. That's true. Tammy, a question for verse 31. What two things did the children of Israel do concerning the Lord?
In verse 31,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
they feared the Lord. First of all, they saw. They had
Right.
to see with their
Mhm.
eyes.
That's right. They saw
What
first.
the Lord
That's
did,
good.
and then they feared the Lord and they believed him.
That's a good point. First of all, they saw it, they feared, and they believed. Mrs. Grummer, some thoughts you have about this chapter, chapter 14. Any thoughts you might have?
No, not offhand.
Okay. How about you, Jacob? Some things you noticed about chapter 14?
Yes, sir. Over here in verses 11 and 12.
Yep.
Because there were no days in the east that had taken us away to die in the wilderness. Let's see, in 12, is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness. But I thought about these verses here in Hebrews 11, 13 through 14 through 15. These all died in faith, not having received the promise, but having seen them afar off, or persuaded them and embraced them and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims. For they that say such things declare plainly they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is a heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. And I think it's amazing how God did this. There was no way for them to go back then.
That's right. There was no way for them to go back. That's good point. Paul, something you've remembered or noticed about chapter 14 of the book of Exodus?
Well, I guess the main thing, like all the other books of the Bible, it's our guidebook to life. Number one, it gives the answers to pretty much problems, everyday problems. And God is, when He speaks in details as to what is given when He gave instructions to Moses, when He put His hand out and the sea became normal. He gives details and explicit instructions as to what to do, and He's always on time.
That's
He's
right.
in control and He's sovereign.
That's good. Good, Paul. Elaine, how about you? Thoughts you might have?
It's just a shame that the Egyptians didn't believe it, before they got killed.
Yeah, that is a shame that they failed to believe. I mean, they definitely witnessed the mighty hand of the Lord, the mighty arm of the Lord, over and over again, like Tammy just said. And how about you, Mom? Some thoughts you have about this chapter?
I was reading these verses differently. Verse 12, that thou shalt set apart unto the Lord all that open the matrix. I don't know if that's...
This is from chapter 14?
Oh, it's over here, I think. And it came, 24, and it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians. Sort of interesting. He looked through that. None of them, the Egyptians or the Israelites, could see through them, but God looked through that.
That's right.
And He troubled them there was a different. They were troubled by whatever this look was.
Yes, that's right.
And then He took off the chariot wheels.
God took them off.
God, it wasn't the water, the ground, because as we're sitting here, I was thinking the ground after the water had left and was in heaps was dry.
That's right.
Where I think, when the water's been there, it's sort of a little bit mushy, like close to where the water starts on the ocean. And He took off the chariot wheels that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us sweep in the face of Israel. Now he must have made it so scary for the Egyptians that they drove their horses harder, and they could see the water coming down. guess by now, I'm not sure. And so all of that confusion, God made it. That's how they got stuck in there.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
The Lord fighteth for them. The Lord fought for the Egyptians. The Israelites against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand over the sea, and the waters may come again upon the Egyptians. So all of them, all of the children of Israel, hundreds and hundreds of them, and this proselyte people, they were all out of that bed.
600,000 men, besides women and children, who were above the age of 20.
While they were still in there, that water came down, and they all drowned.
They did. Taylor, some thoughts you have about chapter 14?
I'm sorry, I should read it.
It's okay.
Whoops. It's interesting. I'm thinking of it not in a lot of details, just because I've been doing other things. So, but just how the kind of building on what Elaine said, as far as the Egyptians, they saw these 10 plagues. The Pharaoh, perhaps even himself, died, and certainly each of the Egyptians' houses were affected by that last plague in particular, but all the plagues. And yet, they went after them.
Yes.
They chased after them because the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and Pharaoh hardened his own heart.
That's right.
And they somehow thought that they were going to all of a sudden be able to have the victory over them, which was quite ironic after everything. So they, like Elaine said, they hadn't believed. But apparently, it wasn't just they that hadn't believed. Israel themselves hadn't believed, because we see that they wanted to go back, and they complained and murmured, and they said, "Oh, that you brought us out here to die in the wilderness." And then finally, at the end of the chapter, Israel began to see what the Lord had done for them. He kept showing them and demonstrating to them through the judgments on Israel and the glory that he had. It was interesting phraseology.
Yes.
He will have glory on Egypt, as far as with the judgments. And it was because of that Israel was able to believe. So.
Yeah. It's interesting, as we saw, in verse 31, as Tammy noted, they saw, they feared, and they believed. Israel did this, and they had to keep on learning these different things throughout the course of their history. It's like we have to keep on learning these things throughout the course of our own history.
Pastor Dan.
Yes, Mrs. Grimmer.
One thing I did notice from there was like on 11 and 12.
Yes.
How these people saw all this, and they continued with the murmuring.
They did. They did.
Whether they were in Egypt, they were murmuring, and when they got out of Egypt, they were still murmuring.
That's correct. That's right. You had a second thought there? Mom, you had a second thought?
Oh, I did. I wonder what it is now. Oh. Sorry, it left me.
Okay.
Because I looked at something else and I wanted to say it too.
Anyone else have any comments, observations about chapter 14? Jacob, please close in prayer.
Father God, thank you so much for your precious word. Thank you that we have these examples to look at and to learn from. And Lord, let these precious truths be engrafted into our hearts, not just in our heads. Lord, thank you so much for your precious Son, the blood he shed on the cross to forgive the sins of the world. Thank you for bringing us to you. Thank you that we can get closer to you through your word and your Holy Ghost. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
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 Amen.